What up? This is Ask Robin Black, I believe 14, Weidman versus Gastelum edition. So if you're watching this after Weidman versus Gastelum, feel free to leave comments about how wrong we were. But if you're watching this before, we're going to dig into a very, very, very cool fight. Weidman versus Gastelum. So Ask Robin Black, I take questions and I use them to kind of, train of thought myself down different rabbit holes to explore different ideas. I don't just want to answer it and, who you got? Okay, I got Weidman. He's bigger. I don't want to do that. I want to explore. Okay, I want to explore, dig, peel, try out some things. If you're listening on SoundCloud and iTunes, thank you for joining me. It's a real pleasure to be able to imagine you outside on your smoke break or driving your car or chilling or like cheating at work and not doing work while you listen. If you hear a sound in the background, that is the sweet sounds of Queen Street West. We got the door open. If you do not like that sound, I think you might like it. There's a soothing vibe to it. I like it. If you do not, our crowdfunding page is called patreon.com, patreon.com/Robin Black. If you crowdfund us, maybe we can get some air conditioning and we don't have to leave the door open on Queen Street West. But Queen Street West here in Toronto is a beautiful street, super creative, super interesting. In the 3.5 months that we've had this YouTube channel, we've moved into this art gallery on Queen West, and the neighborhood, the art itself. Hey, somebody on Periscope just said they're going to support monthly. Thank you. I'll tell you just real quick what we're doing with the Patreon money, and is we're going to spend every penny of it either with Mark, who is doing all this work, bringing him and me places where we can go and do hotel hangouts and we did brunch with Jorge Masvidal. We took Dominic Cruz to the airport. If you check out throughout the YouTube channel or go to the playlist called Shuttle Wrap Up or Hotel Hangouts, you'll see what we're going to do with that money. And we want to go out and get the most interesting stuff. If you are watching on YouTube, this is Periscope. Please follow me on Periscope, and I try to go live during the fights. Sometimes we'll go live on YouTube during the fights too. So it's fun. You get to sort of think out loud with the art itself right there in front of you. So Ask Robin Black, I like to take your questions and use them to kind of, wow, that's loud. Maybe we should close it. What do you think? Mark's going to close it, just in case, because that semi-truck came by and then started revving his engines, and shit got real loud. But it is nice and cool in here. But anyways, if I haven't lost you, it's because you're interested in either this channel or the deep rabbit holes that Ask Robin Black takes us. So for this one, and we're gonna focus some Ask Robin Blacks in the future again. We're gonna focus them entirely on one fight or one idea or one concept. This one is strictly, it should say underneath it, Ask Robin Black 14, Weidman versus Gastelum. So that's what we're going to talk about. Off the top, I want to say it's a fascinating, beautiful, wonderful fight. These guys are very different. And sometimes, not that long ago, we'd be like, oh, this guy's a wrestler, but this guy is a Muay Thai stylist. None of that. We know that's not true anymore. We know those extreme generalizations are extraordinarily dated. But sometimes philosophically, they're so different, Gastelum is super modern in his thinking. He's also going, taking this belief that being smaller is better. And so that's going to be tested. That concept is going to be tested. And the jury's out on that. Jury's out. We don't know. We don't know. We haven't seen enough evidence or enough results. The sample size is too small to say if we take 100 fighters that are deciding to go up a weight class against 100 larger fighters of equal skill and preparation, very hard to compare. We haven't seen that. And then put them against each other, which one's going to win more often? The equally skilled big guys or the equally skilled guys going up a weight class? And whatever does win currently, adjustments will be made. So there's no right answer. And you might say, well, bro, look how good Cowboy's doing at 170. Or, bro, look how good, I don't know why you'd call me bro, you might. Look how good Kelvin Gastelum's doing. Even if that was true, even if the fact of the matter was being smaller, a little more agile, would work 70% of the time, that will change. Because then everybody will believe it's so, and once they believe it's so, they will act as if it is so. Once they act as if it is so, it's a perfect time for disruption. The disruption will come along in the form of a larger man who fights slightly differently, and then the pendulum will swing the other way. So there is no answer to this. There are temporary answers. And this will go on, these types of things will go on forever in the game of fighting. If you look on this YouTube page, you will find some different analysis on McGregor Mayweather. That's the crux of, what's at play in McGregor Mayweather as well. The changing, ever-changing nature of combat itself. And what happens when you believe something to be permanently true, you act as if it's permanently true, the world changes, or fighting changes, or technology changes, or media changes, or people change, or, the government changes. Everything changes. So you act as if something's true forever. Oh, man, we get this government grant from my rock band. Yeah, it's going to be great. Well, oh, man, it's not, one day you don't get it anymore. Oh, they shut the grant down. Now what the fuck are we going to do? That's life. And that is what's at play here with the size game, too. But so let's dig into it. Ask Robin Black, Weidman versus Gastelum. Okay. So anytime you want to ask a question, put in the hashtag #AskRobinBlack and put in my friend @Akosambo, and he gathers them. Somebody said, my friend here, Gold, said on Periscope, yes, you must adapt. It's a constant state of adaptation. What you really want to be doing is figuring out how to be, what will be best, most relevant, winning, growing, whatever, in 2018. So Gold, my friend, just said you must adapt, and then he said, who's the better wrestler? Buddy, you adapt there too. Who was the better wrestler 6 weeks ago may not be the better wrestler today. I'm going to use a quick example of Robert Whittaker. Robert Whittaker. Who's the better wrestler, Yoel Romero or Robert Whittaker? Yoel Romero. Who's the better wrestler? Yoel Romero is the better wrestler. Who out-wrestled who in that fight and won it? Robert Whittaker did. Who's the better grappler? Jacare or Robert Whittaker? Jacare is. That's undeniable. Who out-grappled who in that fight? Jacare or Robert Whittaker? Robert Whittaker did. So are these things relevant? Do these things matter? Or are these things dated concepts that we just keep repeating and we keep treating as if they're true? And when you turn on the pre-show and the post-show on Fox, some other nameless, faceless MMA, UFC fighter with a slightly different pocket square tells you who's the better wrestler. It's not relevant. It's not fucking relevant. It doesn't matter. Sorry, freaking out. Ask Robin Black. I believe this is... It's just such a great place to start. Paul Cassidy _UK. Ask Robin Black. I believe poor concentration cost Weidman his last 3 fights. What can he do to improve this? Great question, Paul Cassidy _UK. I believe poor concentration cost Weidman his last 3 fights. What can he do to improve this? Okay. I'm going to say 2 things off the top of my head. Paul Cassidy believes poor concentration cost Weidman his last 3 fights. That's what statement number 1. Statement number 2. Robin Black believes poor concentration cost Weidman his last 3 fights. Mark Manoharan, that's statement number 3, believes poor concentration cost Weidman his last 3 fights. I'm going to go out on a limb here and say I speak for a large percentage of you. You believe poor concentration cost Weidman his last 3 fights. So Paul, Robin, Mark, and you all believe that. Those are 4 statements. This is the 5th statement. Doesn't matter. None of those 4 things matter. What matters, does Chris Weidman believe that poor concentration cost him those last 3 fights? Does Chris Weidman believe that? Now, what do you think is a better answer? What do you think is a better answer? Should Chris Weidman believe that? Or should Chris Weidman not believe that? I know on YouTube you can't answer me. I've got Periscope open right here. Maybe somebody there will wager a guess. What is better? For Chris Weidman to look at and go, oh man, poor concentration cost me those last 3 fights. Or for Chris Weidman to go, these guys are crazy. I don't have poor concentration. It wasn't poor concentration, man. Yoel Romero caught me with a knee. I just had a random thing happen with Luke Rockhold, and then I got fucked over by the judges and the refs with Mousasi. Is that good? No. If Chris Weidman looks at it honestly, and he says, I lost 3 fights in a row, and to be honest, I had a shitty performance against Vitor Belfort. And before I go on, let me tell you, I have cheered for Chris Weidman in every fight he's ever been in, and I am cheering for him now. I admire him. I'm a fan of his. I look up to the guy. I seek inspiration in this man. I was massively inspired getting to know him when he was coming up fighting Anderson Silva twice, okay? So know that I am a proponent of Chris Weidman. But Chris Weidman, if he says, man, I've got a concentration problem. I denied it. I didn't even consider it in the Vitor fight because I won. I just shook it off in that Rockhold fight, and I wanted another fight ASAP because that was just one of those fucking things. Yoel Romero just caught me with a knee. And these refs screwed me over. If he says any of those or all of those things, he will change nothing. He will start looking for weird technological changes. He will look for a training change. He will look for a body change. He'll change all kinds of shit, but the shit he should change, which is his mind, his focus, his concentration. When you look at Chris Weidman versus Lyoto Machida, that is the epitome of concentration, focus. That's how that man won that fight. That's how that man beat Anderson Silva with all the nonsense. It's just a run of somewhat shitty luck, but he can always improve. It is not a run of somewhat shitty luck. It is not a run of somewhat shitty luck. It is Chris Weidman failing to keep his concentration and focus level where he needs it to be. If he acknowledges that fact, if he has acknowledged that fact, and as of right now when I'm saying this, it's Monday of fight week. There's still time. Even if he denied it on Wednesday of this week, some soul searching and some true focus and some real psychological and emotional labor. That's what that is. That's emotional labor. When you do something, when you are at fault for something, and you're blaming your parents or your coworker or your girlfriend or your best friend or your business partner, and you're not doing the emotional labor. When you blame yourself and seek your role, that's hard work. But once you do it, you can do something about it. He can't change his focus if he denies it's an issue. If he admits that it's been an issue, he can do everything in the world about it. And if he's done that, how do you handle a fight where you're fans of both fighters and you don't want to see them lose? That's an offshoot question. It is very painful. It sucks. I'm a fan, a deep, huge fan, and my connection to fighters and fights is, deeper than most relationships that I have in my life. Outside of my wife and my parents and a couple other human beings, my connection to Chris Weidman and his art, or a Kelvin Gastelum and his art, is bordering on probably unhealthy, but it allows me to do my job on the level that I do it, right? But it's hard. It's very, very hard. But if Chris looks at that and acknowledges his role in it and that he did something, then he can do something about it. If he doesn't, then he will not. I am waving at my friends who are going outside, just in case you're watching on YouTube and you're like, who's Robin waving at? Stu, this is his art gallery. We're thrilled to work here, surrounded by art. It makes you look at fighting a little different. Fighting, obviously, if you know me, if this is not your first time watching this YouTube channel, you know that we very much view it as art. It very much is art. Fighting itself is art. This is Ask Robin Black 14. Within about a week, you'll see Ask Robin Black 15, and I noticed there was a question about that. So watch for that, please. But yes, Weidman, you, me, Paul, Mark, and many others believed that Weidman's poor concentration cost him his last 3 fights. Does he believe that? If he does, he can take action about it. If Weidman's on his game, I hate to say this, because of my Kelvin's a friend too. I like him. We've hung out. You talk about sharing things. I shared Doo Ho Choi versus Cub Swanson enjoyment of watching that fight. I shared that thrill with Kelvin. He and I watched it together. Then we drank beer together in Dallas. You can see it on the YouTube channel. He's a cool dude and a brilliant fighter. But if Chris is on, if Chris is fully dialed in, Chris Weidman, the way he moves and the way how he is physical and how he is mental and how he ties it all together and the way that he gets aggressive when he gets a hold of you, the way he can dominate you in a moment where he's got a hold of any part of your body, particularly your leg or your thigh or your the high groin area, gets in underneath, lifts, the high crotch. It's dominating, and he can beat any man in the world at 185 pounds. And so if he's on his game and he's brought it back in, you could see another Chris Weidman run of dominance. But you have to acknowledge it. You have to acknowledge it, and you have to face the fear and your doubts, your weakness. You're weak. Who you were, who Chris Weidman was when he beat Anderson Silva the second time and fought Machida. He hasn't been that guy. He can be even better than that guy if he acknowledges it and does the emotional labor required and psychological labor. So we shall see. It's what makes this fight so amazing. Is it Chris's wrestling compared to Gastelum's wrestling? Is that really that amazing? Is in and of itself, can Chris get the high crotch? And if he gets the high crotch, can he take Gastelum down? And if he takes Gastelum down, can he hold Gastelum down? Is that interesting? Yeah, it is pretty neat. It's neat. Look at what these two guys did. Look at that guy. I can't believe that guy's able to stop him from doing what he wants. That's cool. But when you take it and you peel these layers back and you look at the meaning and you remember that they're humans, this is where something is missing for me in the way that people are sharing this. And I fear that we're going to, like the 16 and 17-year-olds coming up, exposed to so many interesting and fascinating VR, all these incredible things. They're not going to connect to this beautiful art form if we leave the human element out, if we leave the psychology, if we leave the philosophy, if we leave what it is to strive for something. 14-year-olds watch their favorite influencer grow their fucking Instagram channel and cheer for them as they accomplish their shit. Oh man, my favorite snowboarder is growing. They connect to that. We need to know that about these guys too. We need to know that about these artists so that people connect to them. It's a different world we're living in. If we're just, this guy's got to defend the single leg. If he can, make a little bit of space, he can let his hands go. A 15-year-old don't give a fuck. I'm sorry. We need to dig into this. This is real. This is true. These are humans like you. These are not like the bus driver and the woman that serves coffee down the street and the woman who's the doctor over on the corner and the man who, these are your mom and your neighbor. These are human beings like you. They seem inhuman because what type of human being could step into a cage and fight a guy in front of 1 million people? But they are human. And Chris Weidman's a human. But that human can go and succeed and exceed what he's done before if he makes those adjustments, just like you can. You can change yourself. You can grow. Chris can too. So can Kelvin, which is what makes it even more frightening. Chris could do everything right. Everything. Adjust, gain back his focus, be 99th percentile. And if Kelvin has made those improvements, or if his maximum capacity psychologically is higher than Chris's, I mean, all of this still has to happen, which is why it's so hard to look at one single person. There's always two of them in there. And then there's the voices that they're hearing. Then there's the ref who they can't anticipate where he's going to go and what he's going to do. And then there's that person booing him. And then there's the blood on the bottom of the cage. And then there's the fact that his nose is broken and he can't breathe. And then there's the fact that he had focus and he had concentration and everything was going well when suddenly he got poked in the eye. Can he concentrate still then? All of it. This is why it's so beautiful. This is why these fights are so incredible. You know? So... But I hope for Chris's sake, and I hope for the sake of a wonderful fight, that Chris has addressed this. Do we believe he had that concentration might have cost him? We do believe that. Does he believe it? I hope so. All right, let's soldier on. H Racing Digest. Ask Robin Black. Are Kennedy and Belfort good enough tests to assess Kelvin's ability to negate the size advantage at middleweight? Let's add something to this. It's connected. At Alexander Demota. I personally feel Gastelum is overrated in the fact that he has too many fights versus old, out of prime fighters. Thoughts? Well, his last fights are Vitor, Kennedy, and Hendricks. Okay. So first of all, when we are comparing, the further that you can you watch fights, the further that you study the skills and the humans and the individuals, the less you need the reference points. Right? So often be like, well, this guy fought this guy, but he beat this guy, but that guy lost to this guy. They called that MMA math for a while. I don't know what you call it now, but it's basically irrelevant. The only reason you need a comparison point is if you can't assess their skills, attributes, abilities, and etc. without it. And if you do need, and it's wise, these are wise questions. If you require a comparison point, they got to fight somebody so I can figure out where they are, because we do it. Again, this is people like me are to blame. Commentators, analysts, the people involved in that kind of stuff. These comparison points are lies. But if you require them, if you're like, okay, so I need to know how good Kelvin Gastelum is. Will he beat Kennedy? Holy shit, Kennedy's good. So okay, that means he's good. Well, wait a second, is Kennedy good? He's getting old now. Maybe Kennedy's not as good. So now I need the comparison point that Kelvin beat Kennedy, but I actually don't know how good Kennedy is because I have some questions. He hasn't fought in that a while. He's older now. Maybe he was distracted with weird union things. I don't know. That's the problem. If you need comparison points, whether you call it MMA math or you call it whatever you call it, if you need those can always be undermined and you're left with nothing. You don't know. I'll tell you, just from an individual standpoint, one person, I don't need those. I don't need to see, I don't need the other person to gauge the skill. And in fact, sometimes your guy will lose and you can still gauge the skill. So we're talking about outcomes and results. Great, he beat Vitor, Kennedy, and Hendricks. Results are good. Wait a second. Maybe they weren't what I thought they were. Do you see where the weakness comes in this comparison? You have to look at the skills. What's Kelvin Gastelum done? So let's look at moments. Let's look at truths that were revealed. I'm just going to pull some at random. Kennedy couldn't touch that guy. You notice that? When he got a hold of him at first and he kneed his legs, I'm sure that hurt. But then after that, he couldn't touch him. Like, you couldn't touch him. My job is to hit you with this. They couldn't do it. That's real. That's real. Then he played with Vitor out in the space. Made Vitor miss him. You know? That's real. So now, do we need a point of comparison? What we know by looking at it is and I know from talking to him, the games he's been playing with is hit you and make you miss him. That's what he's been concentrating on. He's always been strong, tough, mentally tough, loves being in the fight, loves the weird exchanges and the discomfort, loves being challenged and overcoming it. But the real focus of what he's been doing for the last long time is through positioning of his body, the targets that you're aiming for, and his feet, probably especially his feet, where he is in space compared to you. He's figuring out the game and refining the game and the sensitivity to the game of smashing you when you can't smash him. Does that mean Chris can get to him? Well, Chris knows how to do that. Chris has dealt with that. We mentioned Lyoto Machida before. We got to go back to that. Impatient Chris is going to have a hard time. But patient Chris, 25-minute Chris, that's how he has to look at this. Not get frustrated either. There's going to be a lot of psychological demands on Weidman. If he goes out and smashes Kelvin a couple times and rips him to the ground and gets the mountain pounds on him, we will learn nothing. Oh, Chris is back. Ultimately, that's not the fight that anybody close to Chris really wants. What they want is Kelvin winning round one, Chris having a real hard time getting to him, and then being forced to adjust. That's what he needs. That's what Chris Weidman needs if he's going to be the middleweight champion of the world again one day. He needs Kelvin to make it really fucking hard for him. And Kelvin's going to do that. And Kelvin's not afraid. He loves this shit. He's down. He's fucking down. It's like, hey, he doesn't care how big these guys are. To him, it doesn't matter if you can't hit him. It's going to be a tough fight. It's going to be a very, very tough fight. Gastelum's incredibly skilled. You can, and I've, John Ramdeen, he'll be back, I think, next week. Ramdeen just kept not buying it. And I was kind of hanging with him, like, I don't know, yeah. I mean, this guy went the distance with Woodley. I know that they both negated each other and tried to shut down each other's offense a lot, but still, you know. And the Magny fight, Magny's long as shit, and he was able to get in on him. And so Kelvin Gastelum at welterweight or middleweight, this is real. And Chris better be ready for that. And I know, when I was after Chris's last fight, or I saw them somewhere, the group of them, and when they announced Gastelum for Chris. And everybody had this vibe to them, like, oh, finally, we got an easier fight. I sure as fuck hope they're not thinking that. Gastelum is coming in there to win this fight. So it's going to be a really good one. It's going to be hard for me to watch. I've never cheered against either one of these guys. And Weidman's been one of my very, very true favorites for a long time. And Kelvin, too. So it's going to be another one of these, you know. It's tough. It's tough to watch. Cub Swanson is my favorite. My very favorite. Gun to my head, who's your favorite fighter? Cub Swanson. And Doo Ho Choi's one of those. That was tough. Kelvin will tell you. I was watching it with him. And I was just like, it's so hard to watch. But so let's just take one more. Ask Robin Black, Weidman versus Gastelum. Oh, it's connected to what we were saying. At Kenji Kun, do you think Chris will be able to take Kelvin down? Will that be the only way to victory since Kelvin's striking is so much better? Okay, well, we talked about that a little bit. Couple things. Under no circumstances can any top-level fighter ever consciously or subconsciously think it's the only way. I better take him down or I'm fucked. Can't do that. Because when it happens, you're fucked. Or when you can't take him down, you get stuffed on the first one, you can't get to that thigh, you're trying to get in. And Weidman is really good at getting the entry into to a nice, whether it's a high crotch underneath or here, or just pulling to the body, or he's really good at getting in. As good almost as Maya. Different, but there's some similarities. Chris doesn't always blast through. Sometimes he's sudden. He's here, he needs to be there, and now he's there. Just like Maya, there's a relaxed nature to it. But you definitely don't want to be thinking like, oh, I better get this or I'm done. There's a panic that sets in and it becomes self-fulfilling. Chris absolutely has, and Chris can land on just about anybody. And I believe he better not be in a rush to take him down. He's got to think the way he did with Machida. And the biggest thinking on the feet with Machida was Machida uses big movements. I will counteract his big movements with the correct small movements. If you go over here, as long as I make that small thing, I stop you. You're here and you're going like this. 1, 2. Small movements, small, correct, positional, intelligent movements. I call it bird dogging, where you just slow, or shoehorning. You just shoehorn them in there. Just like you take your shoehorn and get your foot and you shoehorn it in. You shoehorn them where you want them to go. That's what Chris needs to do. Kelvin knows that. Also, Kelvin's got this state of play. That's the tough part. He's not going to be shook. He's not going to be bothered. He's not going to be troubled. He's playing, and he's playing to win. But will Chris be able to take him down? These days, that is one of the most misunderstood things, I think, even by fighters and coaches. Me and Mike Brown had this conversation on one of our hotel hangouts, but we've had it since many times. In wrestling, Olympic wrestling, freestyle wrestling, you're wrestling in college, you're wrestling in high school, there is no such word as takedown defense. Why? Because that's a limiting concept. You're trying to take me down, I got to defend it. It becomes the thing I'm trying to do. In wrestling, you are wrestling me, I am wrestling you, and I'd like to end up on top. There's no stop him from doing something. It is reverse it, change it, push him back. It's not a single assignment. So there's the blinding nature of this improper concept. Takedown defense, completely wrong. We misunderstand it. Kelvin Gastelum isn't thinking, gotta defend Chris's takedowns. He's like, be great if Chris can't get a hold of my leg. You know how else to do that? Keep moving at the right times, hurt him when he makes the mistake of trying to get my leg, make sure you set traps for him while paying attention to hurting him and doing my defensive systems. Oh shit, he's got my leg. Okay, while he's got my leg, and never see flowing combos from Weidman. That was on Periscope. Okay, he's got my leg. Okay, well, how can I use this? We are connected now, his arms and my leg. How can I use this to strike him? How can I use this to end up on top of him? How can I use this to fatigue him? It isn't just like, stop him from taking me down, stop him from taking me down. If you do that, it's binary. You either succeed or you fail. If you think in terms of, oh, he's got my leg, cool, I know where his head is, bam, bam, bam. Oh, he's got my leg, cool, let me see if I can use that. Both his hands are committed. How can I use that to my advantage? Takedown defense is just this bullshit concept that we perpetuate. And sometimes lower and mid-level coaches, you hear them perpetuating these things. You go back to a corner, they're using TV lingo, and TV lingo was invented for the audience, not the fighter and the coach. I've heard coaches go back, all right, man, we got to get the volume up. That's not a coaching term. That is a bullshit term created to help the audience understand a very general idea. All right, we got to make sure we defend the takedowns. That shouldn't be a coaching concept anymore. That's fucking from 2009. He's got our leg. How do we wrestle to end up on top of him? He's got our leg. How do we hurt him? He's got our leg. How do we fatigue him? He's got our leg. How do we make this bad for him? Not snap to defend mode. It's not football. where we line up our offense or our defense. It's not binary. But this is going to be a very fascinating fight, and obviously the ability to work with to get a hold of Gastelum and to rip him to the ground. Oh, we were discussing what Kelvin does there. Now he gets ripped to the ground. Now I get up. Now Chris's job is keep me down. While Chris is trying to keep me down, I'll make him work. Then I'll get up. And that's what Robert Whittaker's been doing. He doesn't surrender the wrestling. He doesn't surrender the jiu-jitsu. He doesn't accept half guard. He doesn't only defend things. He reverses. He disengages. He attacks. It's the how you conceptualize these things that is so damaging to these fighters who aren't making it work. They're not growing. But these are not two of those. These are two of the most highly evolved guys out there. And they're changing all the time. Weidman has had to make some changes to the way he looks at it to be able to progress even further than he was and be a champion again. And Kelvin is just grow, evolve. And it's going to be a killer one. It's going to be spectacular. Pluto, my dog, sometimes makes picks. He picked Chris Weidman on this one. So far, he is 0 for 2. He picked Aldo, who lost to Max, and then he also picked Chiesa, who lost to Kevin Lee. So for Chris, my friend Chris, I hope that Pluto breaks his 0 for 2 string here. And for my friend Kelvin Gastelum, I hope he has a brilliant fight. And I will not be cheering for either of these guys, but I will absolutely be uncomfortably enjoying the beauty of this contest. And I hope you guys do too. Blackout.